I hope you will be inspired, you will be empowered, you will be encouraged, you will be enthusiastic to go out and change the world. It doesn't take many people to change the world. It only takes a dedicated few. So here we are tonight. I'm going to share with you why I am so passionate about the issue of national security. And I'm going to share with you my life story. For those of you who do not know much about me, and this is the first night you hear anything from me. I come from Lebanon. I was born and raised in Lebanon, which used to be the only majority Christian country in the Middle East. We were open-minded, we were fair, we were tolerant, we were multicultural. We prided ourselves in our multiculturalism. We had open border policy. We welcomed everyone to come to our country because we wanted to share with them the westernization which we had created in the heart of the Arabic world. Muslims used to send their children to study in our universities because we had built the best universities in the Arabic world. They graduated and worked in our economy because we had built the best economy in the Middle East, even though we did not have any oil. Beirut became Paris of the Middle East, the banking capital of the Middle East. In 1965, National Geographic magazine had on its front cover, Lebanon, Eden of the Middle East. Unfortunately, all this began to change as the years went by. See, we got our independence in the early 40s. But by the 60s and 70s, the Christians had become the minority, and the Muslims had become the majority in Lebanon. And as the Islamic population grew in the country became less and less tolerant because they started pushing for more rights that were not compatible with our Judeo-Christian value system that we had created. And that's when the problems started. The problem was contained until the influx of the Palestinians out of Jordan in 1970, when Lebanon brought them in because we already had refugee camps. Actually, at that time, Lebanon was the only country in the Middle East to accept the third wave of Palestinians into Lebanon. The majority of them were Muslims. They put their heads together with the Muslims in Lebanon and declared jihad on the Christians. What they wanted to do is create a base from which to fight Israel, kill the Jews, and throw them into the sea. Something they tried to do in Jordan. Yasser Arafat and the Palestinians tried to do in Jordan, but they failed because of the dictatorship of the king. Yet they were able to come to Lebanon, use our open-mindedness, our fairness, our tolerance, our multiculturalism, and our democracy to topple our democracy. My 9/11 happened to me in 1975 when radical Muslims blew up my home, bringing it down, burying me under the rubble wounded, as they shouted Allahu Akbar. My only crime was that I was a Christian living in a Christian town. I ended up in a hospital for 2.5 months. And as I laid in a hospital bed, hooked up to IVs in both arms, I would ask my parents, why did they do this to us? Why did they attack us? And my father would tell me, because we are Christians, the Muslims consider us infidels and they want to kill us. So I knew since I was a 10-year-old child that I am wanted dead simply because I was born into the Christian faith and lived in a Christian town. This is something so foreign to Christians in America. Because in America, our idea of persecution is, oh, I took my Bible with me to work today and people looked at me funny. That's our idea of persecution. Where I come from, our idea of persecution is they want to walk into this church and start shooting at you and killing you. Just like what they're doing in Iraq right now, just like what they're doing in Egypt right now, just like what they're doing in Syria, just like what they did in Lebanon. Actually, what launched the all-out war in Lebanon was 4 Muslims walked into a church service on a Sunday morning just like this and started shooting at people. That's what started the Lebanese civil war. And we would listen to the radio, and in the beginning of the war, we thought, I remember my father would say to me when we went into the bomb shelter, and you know, this little dumpy little place that my dad used for storage, and he would say, oh, it's a temporary thing, you know, it's just a week or 2 weeks, we'll be out, life will be back normal. Because we would hear, my daddy would tell me, oh, America is going to come save the Christians in Lebanon. America and the churches in America are going to hear what's happening to the Christians in Lebanon, and they're going to come save us. And then they would say, Britain is going to come save the Christians in Lebanon. France is going to come save the Christians in Lebanon. When they hear what's happening, nobody came and nobody cared. And as we started hearing about the massacres happening in the rest of the country, you see the Palestinians and the Muslims put their heads together and formed Jaysh Lebanon al-Arabi, the Arabic Lebanese army. And they started massacring the Christians, taking over Christian cities and towns. They committed massacres that were seldom reported in the Western media because the majority of the Western media was located in West Beirut, the area that Yasser Arafat controlled. And nothing came out of there that Yasser Arafat did not approve of. They would surround Christian cities and towns and walk in and massacre the people. One of the biggest massacres in Lebanon was the city of the Moor in the beginning of the war, a Christian city. They would walk into a bomb shelter. They would find a mother and a baby and a father hiding in a bomb shelter. They would take the baby, tie one leg of the baby to the mother and another one to the father, and pull the parents apart, splitting the child in half. They would walk to our churches, urinate and defecate on the altar, and then torch our churches. The last lady that worked for me, I hired her because she was mentally disturbed. I wanted to take care of her and her family. And the reason why she was mentally disturbed is because they walked into her bomb shelter. They tied her son, 16-year-old only son, on her lap, held a knife to her hand and made her slit her own son's throat, then raped her daughters in front of her. These are the stories that went unreported in the Western media. Nobody in the world cared to hear, and nobody in the world understood. And when the leftist Christians, when Muslims would come to massacring them in these towns, and the leftists would tell them, you can't massacre us. We marched with you. We represented you in courts. We pushed for your rights. We are on your side. The Muslims would look at them and say, you are nothing more than useful idiots. You are no different than the other Christians, infidels. But by the time these people woke up, it was too late. And some of them who fled to come and hide in our town because it was the only Christian enclave left in South Lebanon. It was too late.